Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Rissanello. And once more, dear friends, tonight, let us go into the breach. And it's a pretty treacherous breach right now with everything that's going on out there. Before we get started, just want to remind everybody to please share this video with your friends. Like our page, suggest to your friends they follow our page. Our audience is growing. We're going to be doing a GoFundMe campaign very soon, probably this week. I'll keep all you good people posted out there. Please also remember to like The Front Line with Joe and Joe over on YouTube. Subscribe to us there and hit the little bell. We have about 25 of our past videos up there, including our most recent interviews, which we think you'll like very much. And let's congratulate Joe Rissanello, because little Gerard Rissanello came into the world. Was it 2 weeks ago now?
A week old.
Oh, he's a week old. And that's why we weren't here last week. But we're here now. We got a lot to talk about. And also remember that we're going to be on the Crusade channel Mondays at 3 o'clock. We're going to be on live tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. And we would encourage you all to take advantage of the 30-day free trial at the Crusade channel. You got Mike Church. All right, Mike Church is phenomenal. Okay, he's got a 3 or 4 hour show in the morning. All right, Aaron Barker, Rick Barrett, Frontline with Joe and Joe every Monday. And then we're rebroadcast during the week. There's a lot of great content there, and you can take advantage of a 30-day free trial. And remember, Joe and I do not get anything from that, okay? But we want to support Mike Church. He gave us a platform, and it's a very, very fruitful relationship. So we would encourage you all to do that. You can find that at crusadechannel.com. Now, ordinarily, as you all know, Joe and I, we go over the last week or so, in this case the last 2 weeks, and we find all sorts of stories that we want to talk about, things that we feel fit right into the culture war and everything that we're trying to do here on the Crusade channel, on the Front Line with Joe and Joe. However, in light of recent events, especially over the last couple of weeks, we are going to talk, and I gave a preview during the week for many of you. You might have seen it on our page. We're going to talk about one story that has a lot of different levels to it, and that's the riots. We are in civil unrest right now in America. There's a reason for it. It fits into the culture war, not a race war like they're trying to say, a culture war, because that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with ultra-left-wing Marxist, violent Marxist groups who are using the death of George Floyd to riot in the street. And they have an agenda, and we're going to break it down here.
And even before we get into that, it's very important that we communicate to you that we absolutely stand with George Floyd's family. We mourn his death. He is a fellow American. He died unjustly. The police officer is in custody. We have absolute and utter faith in the justice system that the police officer will be brought to justice. We are absolutely and utterly on the side of the African American community in terms of improving the police, in terms of making sure that this type of behavior never happens again. And I think what Joe is alluding to is there's two narratives being painted. There's the narrative of the death of a man, George Floyd, and then there is a political narrative. They're being mixed. And frankly, I don't think that's fair. I think they must be separated, and I think that's what we're going to try to articulate to you tonight.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you one thing. I think it was George Floyd's brother. One of his relatives, it might have been his brother, was on the megaphone saying, "Who are you people?" He was talking about the rioters. He was not talking about the protesters. He was talking about the rioters, but it's the rioters that have gotten all the attention. It's Antifa and other left-wing groups that have gotten all the attention. Why? Because they're hurting people and they're destroying property, and they're doing it in neighborhoods where the businesses are owned by African Americans.
And that's another point. We are absolutely positively on the side of peace. Any type of riot, we are absolutely against if there is violence. I think any type of protest or riot that allows for violence does not do justice to Martin Luther King's dream for the American people, as well as honor the life of George Floyd, and it dishonors his family. Everyone in this country is permitted to protest. It is one of the great rights that we have and hold as Americans. You are free to protest. However, you are not free to hurt people. You are not free to loot. And you are not free to destroy communities. And that is exactly what you're doing. I've read a lot this week on this subject. The only losers, and I've posted this a number of times on my social media sites, the only losers in the violence and in the looting and in the burning will be the poor African American communities. Businesses are leaving these areas, which means they don't have access to pharmacies. They don't have access to supermarkets, and the businesses are not returning.
And let me tell you something. Thank God for social media, because if you left it up to MSNBC and CNN, they wouldn't cover some of these people. You see, they say that they always want to do all their hand-wringing about how African Americans in America are being oppressed, but they're very selective. There's a woman. My wife showed me a video of a woman. If I don't cry usually with some of these things. This woman almost brought me to tears. She's looked like a middle-aged black woman, and she's obviously poor. Okay, her neighborhood's just been burned down, and she's crying her eyes out, saying, "Where am I going to get my medicine? They burned down the CVS. Where am I going to get my food? They burned down the supermarket." Nobody wants to go in. Now, who's being hurt there? That woman's being hurt. You think Chris Cuomo or at MSNBC or CNN, or because you can lump them all together? We were talking about it before we went on. Okay, Chris Cuomo says, "Where does it say protests have to be peaceful?" Go tell that, Chris Cuomo, to that woman.
Well, Chris Cuomo will get into his Land Rover that he pays $1,000 a month in Manhattan to park, and he'll drive out to his Southampton home, which probably costs him between $6 and $10 million a year.
Right.
Nothing happens to Chris Cuomo. Chris Cuomo goes to whatever Walgreens or CVS in Manhattan he wants to get anything for his family. That woman's left with nothing. You see, rioting hurts the poor man. Ultimately, I've watched this in the city of Newark. Newark burned down 50 years ago. It's never recovered. I read another article in South side of Chicago. A black pastor said for the next 20 years his community will suffer as a result of what happened there. Mm-hmm. You have every right to protest. You have every right to be hurt by this event. I'm hurt by it. I can't even watch the death of George Floyd. Haven't been able to. It's gut-wrenching. It's horrendous. No man deserves to die like that. I can't breathe. He's handcuffed. That's enough. You've done your job. I think we could do better. However, you can't hurt people, my friends. You can't hurt people. And what we're also going to break down and articulate to you is our government, particularly those who are on the Democratic side of the House, have not done their job to protect the citizens in these communities. They're not doing them a service. You are there to serve. We're not here to serve you. It's time to take the political hat off. This is not a political discussion. This is the death of a man. Mm-hmm. This is something that we need to talk about. We have to come to the table. We have to discuss things peacefully. This is not the time to protest Donald Trump. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. You have every right not to like Donald Trump. You have every right not to vote for Donald Trump. You have no right to say that this is a result of Donald Trump's presidency. And I'll be honest with you, before we came to this show, I did a lot of praying. I even went to confession today. I wanted my heart to be pure. I scoured my conscience. For the life of me, I could stand before God as my witness. Cannot connect this to Donald Trump. I'm sorry. I can't. Because Donald Trump did not kill George Floyd.
The numbers and Trump's actions in his 3.5 years or so in office and his policies have done nothing but help black people. He asked black Americans during the campaign. They crucified him for it. What do you have to lose? We're going to tell you what African Americans had to lose for voting for Trump. When we break down the Democrat machines in all these cities, you want to talk about system. We're going to get into it, okay? You want to talk about systemic racism, and that's a catchphrase for white Republicans. In other words, that's it, just white conservative Republicans. That's systemic racism. The chains have been put on African Americans by the Democrats in every city right now where the protests are taking place. So let's get going.
Into it.
Let's talk about what it means to be an American. Okay, number one, do you believe in the justice system? I do. Do you?
I do.
I don't think it's perfect. I don't think any human system could be perfect because human beings are not perfect. But when I see any crime, I don't care what it is, okay? Any crime. So I look at that video of what happened to George Floyd, and I've said this before to other people. I said this during the Eric Garner case in Staten Island. I said this when all the supposed facts were coming out about Freddie Gray. I said this to all my liberal friends. I was like, it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what I think. As Americans, what we need to say is, do you trust the criminal justice system? And it matters what judges, juries, and lawyers have to say. Because they're the ones that are going to try this case in a court. And if that cop, again, I look at that and I say, that's wrong, that cop. But my opinion doesn't matter.
No, but also I do think there is a narrative in the African-American community which is basically saying that they have a problem with the way that they are being treated. I am not black. I'm married to a black woman. I cannot relate to that narrative because I am a white person, and I'm not going to pretend that I can. However, I would be open for a discussion. Let's have a discussion, an apolitical discussion. You see, what I'm not seeing is that apolitical discussion. If you want to improve the standards of the police officers in America, let's talk about it. I'm open. I'm game. If you want to say all cops have to have a college education, similar to the state police, I'm game. If you want to say that they have to have deeper background checks, I'm game. If you want to say that you have to have yearly evaluations, that if you don't meet certain standards year after year, the police union can't protect you and you could lose your job, I'm open for that conversation. However, to say that all police officers are racist, to say that all police officers are bad, and to fuel that narrative, which has been going on now for a number of years, frankly, isn't fair. Honestly, once again, I could scour the corners of my heart, and I can't look myself in the face and say all police officers in this country are bad, as well as say all police officers are racist. Are there racist police officers? Of course there are, just like there are racists in every corner of America. Here's another thing. You can't legislate a cure to racism. Racism is taught in the home. Once again, I am married to a black woman. My family loves my wife. In my house, I'm a white man. My wife is a black woman. My kids are biracial. The only people in my house are mommy and daddy. Race is not even an issue. It's not taught. My parents don't look at my wife as a black woman. They look at her as their daughter-in-law. My wife, Sabrina. You see, it's taught. There is no president that is going to legislate away racism. It's simply taught in the home or it's not. Joe Biden is not the cure to that, nor is Donald Trump for that matter. You see, we have to do a better job as people teaching it. How do we talk about other people at the kitchen table? That's what this show is all about, by the way. We're kitchen table guys, regular guys talking to the average American. You see, the narratives that are being spun have an agenda. And those agendas, frankly, have no place in the injustice that was basically served to this man and to his family. And frankly, the whole country's suffering as a result of it.
Well, and the thing is, and the country's suffering because we allow groups like Antifa and Marxist groups like that to run roughshod and, let's say, use the killing of George Floyd as an excuse, not for him, because they have an agenda. Now, let's talk about the response. Let's talk about the response from Donald Trump, because it's about time, and I've said this before. Donald Trump doesn't care because he knows what CNN and MSNBC and the mainstream media are going to do. He knows what the left is going to do. It doesn't matter what Trump does. He's racist. Of course, we learned that from Rob Reiner, right? We learned that from Meathead, because Meathead tweeted that Donald Trump is racist, so of course he's racist.
Well, he also said that we're racist.
We're racist because we voted for him, okay? So the thing is, but let's look, Donald Trump doesn't let that affect him. And he does, in this culture war, because Donald Trump is a culture warrior. I hope everybody gets that through their head. In this culture war, what you're fighting against is the left. So what did he do? He declared Antifa a terrorist organization. Now, it's about time that somebody did that. Now, I said, and I commented, it doesn't mean much. It doesn't have a lot of teeth that he's doing that. But what it does, it starts to wake people up to this violent group that's being funded. It's being orchestrated. Everything is organized. You don't have weapons showing up out of nowhere. Okay? They are a terrorist organization, and being declared a terrorist organization, if Bill Barr gets his way, okay, he's going to go after them because the Justice Department and the FBI can go after organizations that have been declared terrorists. They could disrupt their activities. They could surveil them. Because, again, what you're talking about is not, and this is what we're doing in the show, by the way. We are not falling into the trap of conflating what happened to George Floyd with the riots. They are separate issues. Our job here tonight, now that we've spoken about George Floyd, is we're talking about them. We're talking about those who are perpetrating this violence. Trump said, he said flat out, first of all, he blasted, and we're going to get into the cities. We're going to get into that. That's going to be another segment later on. He started with the Minneapolis mayor. Now, that guy's a radical. He's a radical dude, okay? Jacob Fry. That guy's he'll be all in favor of defunding the police.
And we're going to talk a little bit
about
that later.
We're going to talk about that. Trump said he vowed military support to the governor of Minnesota after another night of violent protest in Minneapolis, which, by the way, the mayor, I mean, I thought they'd take an oath to protect people. The mayor told the cops when Antifa was going in a particular precinct to burn it down, he told the cops to leave.
I also read today that 46 police officers in Minneapolis are retiring early and 14 have quit.
Yeah, well, you blame them?
You know, how much money do you make to basically put your life in danger? This is dangerous.
Yes,
See,
it is.
we need the police. I like living in a community whereby if I call the police, they're going to come to my home within minutes. That's part of the allure of living in a community such as that. The police are our friends. Listen, can we improve? Sure. Let's talk about it. But to vilify the police, to give up a precinct, you know that
they burned it down.
They not only did they burn it down, they destroyed the evidence room of that precinct. Say your sister got raped. Say your sister got raped, and there was evidence in that particular police station. It's
not
gone.
anymore. It's gone.
It's gone.
And that rapist, because of that, is going to get off. He's not going to be tried because there's going to be no evidence against him. They burned it down. How about this? Another thing too, where the left thinks that they're very cute. They emptied out the jails, right? Because of COVID-19. Which, by the way, did anybody notice? COVID's not been in the news too much.
We're going to talk about that too.
We're going to talk about that, okay? They let the prisoners, they let these yes, violent people out of jail because of COVID concerns. Well, who do you think's involved with the rioters? Who do you think's involved with the looters? Who do you think shot some of these cops? You don't think it was some of those same criminals? What is that, a coincidence? These things need to be pointed out. We need to raise the consciousness. Like I said, let's not get mired down in what happened to George Floyd. That's a tragedy, and we accept that it's a tragedy. And we want to see justice there. The two have nothing to do with each other.
And that's what we're trying to do here. The conversations are separate. They're being blended.
And we can't let it be blended.
They're being blended on purpose. Once again, you have every right not to like Donald Trump, and you have every right to try to vote him out of office. That's what makes this country great. However, you cannot protest his presidency at every event that basically gives you the crisis to do so.
Right.
In doing that, what you're saying, whether you're saying it or not, is you do not believe in the democracy of America.
Well, we know that they don't believe in our system.
But this is, that's by their actions.
Right.
You know, for this, it's 3.5 years. Herschel Walker put something out on Twitter. Very eloquent, frankly, and he was very, to be honest with you, very calm. He was like, enough is enough. We have to come together. You know, I did not like Barack Obama as a president. That doesn't make me a racist. I just didn't like his policies.
We don't like socialists.
However, I had to deal with that. I didn't burn things down.
No.
Every time something happened, we didn't try to impeach him.
No, well, you know what people
Or
did?
do, like,
Do you guys remember the Tea Party? There's congressmen right now and senators that are in our government that were elected with the Tea Party way. They tried to paint them as racist and violent. They were the opposite. You know what they did? As good Americans, they said, we disagree with the policies of Barack Obama. They came together, okay, and they formed this Tea Party, okay? And they elected people to Congress. Marco Rubio was part of that election wave, all right, and others. And they elected people to Congress that were part of it. See, that's what you do. I didn't like Barack Obama. I didn't like his policies. Not him personally. I don't like him personally, but that's besides the point, okay? I didn't like his policies, and I saw all these people in the Tea Party, and they were getting together saying, well, we're going to protest. And 2 years after he was elected, they elected a Republican Congress. That's the way you fight in America.
And you'll have your turn again. You see, this is what I'm saying. Enough is enough. If you want to beat Donald Trump, let's talk policy. Let's simply talk policy.
Can they talk? Well, wait, real quick. Let's give a quick shout out. You got a lot of people joining us tonight. I see Suzanne's out there. Dan's out there, says, yeah, Dan, now the mayor wants federal money to rebuild. De Blasio wants the same thing. Trump should stand firm. Absolutely not. No federal money. You created this mess. You deal with it. So we got Anthony's joining us also. Jeff is out there. Yeah, Jeff says meathead. That's because Rob Reiner is a meathead. But yeah. It's like they cause these problems. But Trump, and again, he's not backing down. He turned around and he said, he goes, quote, a total lack of leadership. Either the very weak, radical left mayor Jacob Fry get his act together and bring the city under control, or I will send in the National Guard. Now, whether he does or he doesn't, like I said, he puts them on their heels because they don't know whether he will or not. And that's what you have to do to the violent left. That's what you have to do to them. You have to say, you have to threaten them. And not for nothing, the federal government is within its authority to send in. And I remember when we were kids during the Newark riots, Lyndon Johnson sent in the National Guard into Newark. Okay, there's videotape of them until to this day where the National Guard was down by, remember Roseville Avenue all the way down? In other words, because that's where the armory was. The National Guard went to the armory, and then they went to the streets to stop the violence. Okay,
and that's important to know. It's just to stop the violence. You see, I've gotten into some back and forth on social media on that. People don't like to see the military. Listen, a society needs order. It's clear, and again, this is not a political statement from me. It's clear that there are some cities in America right now where there is not order. It's to the benefit of the citizens to have order. Do you know that half of the African American voting population is for the National Guard? Half of the Hispanic community in America is for the use of the National Guard right now.
Because they're in favor of order.
If you are a law-abiding citizen that have a business in a community, I'll make it up. My father was a barber. You make an investment in a business. You buy chairs, you buy equipment. Do you want that burned down if the police aren't doing their job?
Look at that lady.
I would want them there.
Look at that lady. No, she was on. It's all over YouTube. There's so many videos like this, by the way, on YouTube. This poor woman. She's an older black lady, right? And the store has been completely destroyed. That's the place she works. She yelled in the camera too. She says, "Go get a job." She goes, "I got a job, but you took my job away from me." Now I wonder, I would ask CNN and the rest of them, what about her life? You see, she's black too, you know.
And once again, she's affected.
Right.
Jay Tapper isn't. Wolf Blitzer isn't.
Right.
You see, it's that woman. And these are the people, and this is where the Democratic Party loses its way sometimes. These people vote too. You see, these are indicators that you have to look out for. These are people who vote too.
Right.
The regular man puts the president in the seat.
Right.
You see, we're losing our focus once again.
Well, that's what our job, though, and that's the job, because the mainstream media is not going to do it, but that's the job of social media. All you good people out there listening to the Front Line with Joe and Joe, follow us on Facebook, share our video. We're on YouTube, Google, do a search, Frontline with Joe and Joe. You'll see our ugly mugs. Subscribe and hit the little bell. That's why it's important for us to hold their feet to the fire, because mainstream media is not going to do it. And we're imploring imploring. I don't know if it's going to get responded to. Josh Hawley's a senator from Missouri. I'm a Goomba from North Jersey. I sent him an email the other day. All right, an extensive email. I hope he gets back to me, at least in some way or through an assistant. What are you doing to break up big tech? Because big tech is trying to do what the mainstream media has. They're trying to take this platform away from us, knowing that how effective it is. You look at the people out there that have gone viral, that the mainstream media and the hard left in America do not want you. They don't want you to see Candace Owens.
Candace Owens had like millions of views.
They don't want you to see Brandon Tatum. They don't want you to see these black conservatives. They don't want you, forget about us. They just dismiss us as racist, of course, even though we're married to sisters who are both black. They'll just dismiss us as racist. They don't want you to see Brandon Tatum. They don't want anybody talking the way they do because it puts a chink in their armor. And by the way, saw an article the other day. Strong support for Donald Trump in the black community is at 25%. You want to know one of the reasons why these riots are going on? That's one of the reasons why these riots are going on. Joe Biden's not ahead of Donald Trump. Don't listen to the polls.
And that's, again, let's separate the two issues. That's where the oligarchs, the media, are fanning the flames.
That's right.
Because of that.
Right. And Eddie's joining us in right now. He says all the riot-torn cities are run by Democrats. Eddie, stick around. We're getting into that. All right.
And once again, the oligarchs are not affected. They get in their nice cars and drive to their nice houses.
Well, they're funding all this.
But that's where we're going to get into Bill Barr, because Joe alluded that he declared Antifa a terrorist organization. But this is what he basically said. He said, unfortunately, with the rioting that is occurring in many of our cities around the country, the voices of peaceful protests are being hijacked by violent radical elements. Groups outside of these particular organizations are basically pursuing their own separate and violent agenda.
And that's the important thing to know. And you're seeing it. Again, social media, the importance of it. You're seeing it from the people that are on the ground, who are being affected, who don't have a job to go to because their business has been burnt out. This poor black lady, like I said, she had to be like 65 years old. She said, what am I supposed to do? I love it. She stuck it right to him. She says, I have a job, and you took it away from me. What about that person? That's why we have to raise the consciousness of this country to say, if you want to talk about systemic racism, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk a little bit about New York City, but then we're going to get into the systemic racism that's going on in all the cities that are run by Democrats and have been for years, by the way.
And
years.
And it's important that we talk about New York City, not just because that we live near it, but in New York City, you have a Democrat who is the governor and a radical who is the mayor. And the Democratic governor called him out. And that's what we're going to talk about. You had Andrew Cuomo calling out Bill de Blasio, basically saying that you did not use your police force to stop the riots. I'm going to give you the exact quote. This is what he had to say. He said, the New York Police Department and the New York City mayor did not do their job last night, Cuomo said. I think the mayor underestimates the scope of the problem and the duration of the problem. What happened in New York was inexcusable.
Right.
Cuomo says de Blasio can be displaced and that he can take over the job as the mayor. Now, you could say to us, you're conspiracy theorists, you guys hate us, you're this. This is coming from a Democrat.
Right.
He's telling the mayor to use your police force. He basically said that New York, which has 38,000 cops.
Largest police force, I think, in the world.
And that they could handle this situation, and you didn't use them. You see, it's stuff like that that people see.
Mm-hmm.
It's stuff like that that affect the poor. And it's stuff like that that does not honor the death of George Floyd. It ultimately creates other George Floyds. We have to put our political hat down. We have to address the problem.
Well, if George Floyd, if a George Floyd is in his neighborhood and gets killed by a cop or gets killed by another black guy, let's say a guy in a gang, isn't it tragic either way?
Of course. Isn't
it tragic either way? All lives matter. Is that what it is? I mean, if he's killed, he's killed. If it's tragic, it's tragic. You need a police force, and in this case, like you said, even Cuomo, for as much as we disagree with him, which mostly has to do with, I would say, moral issues like abortion and other things, particularly his very extreme position on abortion, okay? Cuomo's not wrong this time, okay?
And he had the courage to speak out, and he's a Democrat.
That's the thing.
You see, you cannot allow this. And what I read today, I don't know if people have seen this on my social media platform, the DA of New York has come out and said he is not going to prosecute these looters. You see, and also a gentleman by the name of Robert George, who's a professor of jurisprudence at Princeton University and also a Harvard-educated lawyer, commented on that. And he said, do you realize how dangerous this is? When one man determines what the rule of law is,
yep,
you have no right to do that as a district attorney. You cannot make that call. You take an oath to uphold the law.
Well, what if you went out and did something like that? You're going to get prosecuted, aren't you?
Of course.
All right. Well, Gornai's joining us right now, and Bill's with us. Hey, Bill. Leone's with us. And yeah, I mean, Bill says New York police may not listen to him. Look at Buffalo. Yeah, that's a whole other situation. A lot of those cops, by the way, I think today I heard Bill resign. In protest for what's going on, but like we said, right now it's all a mess. The only thing I will say this though, real quick, I want to mention Patrick Lynch.
Go for it.
Patrick Lynch,
very important.
Patrick Lynch is a good guy.
He's the PBA president.
PBA president in New York. Now Cuomo blamed the cops. The cops cannot do anything without the mayor giving them the say so. Cuomo's wrong for blaming the cops. The cops don't want this to happen. Okay, so Patrick Lynch came out and said, quote, "It's not our fault that our city and our state governments can't plan and work together, but we are suffering the consequences." And he's absolutely right. Those cops, I don't care who those cops are. I don't care if they voted for de Blasio, not voted for de Blasio, if they voted for Cuomo, not voted, if they voted for Trump or not voted for Trump. Okay, those cops know that their job is to protect people. And if Bill de Blasio is putting handcuffs on them, rather than putting handcuffs on the looters, the rioters, and the murderers, that's de Blasio's fault. And that's where I say,
and those cops are black, those cops are white, those cops are Hispanic, and those cops are Asian. It goes across the whole span. You cannot tie their hands behind their back. I would be afraid if I was a cop right now. You cannot do your job.
They're getting shot, Joe. How can you possibly...
You're going to get afraid that basically the media is going to put a camera in front of your face. You're trying to protect, A, citizens, and B, yourself. Right. This is a hard job. And then the mayor has the gall to not let them do their job. And don't take my word for it. Take the PBA president's word for it. Take the governor of New York's. And that's just one example.
And let's take a difference in Democrats. Ed Koch was a Democrat, okay? Bill de Blasio is a communist, okay? Bill de Blasio, in his heart, agrees with Antifa. He agrees with anarchy, okay? If Ed Koch was the mayor, there wouldn't be a riot in New York City. And he was a Democrat.
And that leads us to another point that Joe alluded to in the beginning. You notice many Democratic cities, I'm going to read them to you. Los Angeles, Minneapolis, Atlanta, New York, Nashville, Seattle, Portland, Philadelphia, Chicago, Milwaukee, Salt Lake, Washington, D.C., Detroit, Indianapolis, San Francisco, Kansas City, Houston, Charlotte, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Denver, Dallas, Phoenix, Tampa, Baltimore, Oakland, Louisville, all run by Democrats. All of them are rioting. You do realize that there are police that could stop rioting?
Of course there is.
I'm not talking about hurting people. What I'm talking about is maintaining order, protecting people. You do not have a right to steal, burn, and loot.
Right.
You have a right to protest. You have every right to protest, and I'll fight for that right for you. You do not have a right to burn things, hurt people, and they are letting it happen. This is being permitted. What we just talked about in Minneapolis, that mayor basically gave up the police department.
That's what they're doing. Suzanne mentioned Denver. Well, I think we mentioned Denver, Suzanne, but yeah, it's Denver too. John Nolte in The Federalist, he's a hard-hitting writer. He does not pull any punches. Now, don't leave the program, but when you get a chance, go to The Federalist and follow John Nolte. John Nolte's a really good writer, tells the truth. Here's the thing. Joe said they're all run by Democrats. This is what Nolte wrote. many for generations. And they've all been looted and burned by left-wing Antifa terrorists and other anarchist groups over these. Now, this was written like a few days ago, the past few nights before that. Now, note he's very blunt in his assessment. Quote, that's no coincidence. It's not. I think you're going to agree. They're all run by Democrats. Those are the places that are burning right now. What's more, these riots are not, now this is very important, these riots are not America's problem. These riots are not President Trump's problem. Nope, he says. These riots are wholly owned by the Democrat Party and the fools who continue to vote for them.
Now, basically, what does he mean by that? What he's basically saying is it's the people in those communities that own this problem. You see, my neighborhood isn't burned down. We talked about a litany of people that live there. These people in those communities, many of them, their budgets are bankrupt. I'll speak about the cities in New Jersey. I'll speak about New York City. I'll speak about Chicago.
No, keep it with Jersey. Keep it with Newark, Trenton, and Camden, and that's all you need to know.
They don't have a tax base to rebuild.
Because they chased all the businesses away.
So when you burn your city down, it's not my problem. It's yours. You see, and it's being fanned by politicos.
And we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that too. They accuse Trump of fanning the flames. We'll get into that in a minute. I'm sorry, Joe. I didn't mean to cut you off. Let's talk for a second, okay? We just want to digress for a minute about systemic, what you're always hearing about, systemic racism, okay? And that usually, like I said, that's a euphemism for white conservative Republicans, okay? What about the systemic racism imposed on black people in the cities? And Joe and I, this is not new to all you listeners out there who listen to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. We've been saying it over and over again. What about the school system? You've trapped these kids in these broken down schools. You won't allow for any competition. You won't allow anybody to compete with the public schools. You know the public schools suck. You know that the quality of teachers over the years has gone down. You will do nothing in these cities to try to do something about the education system, which will then, in turn, help these young black kids, boys and girls, okay? And you want to accuse the right of systemic racism?
And we've preached this from the beginning.
That's systemic. You want to know why? Because the system, in this case, the education system, okay, and the city hall in bed with the education system, is in the system, there's implicit racism. But it ain't coming from guys like us. It's coming from, Cory Booker was, we're going to get into him in a few minutes. Cory Booker was the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. Cory Booker did nothing. Nothing for the education system. It was a stepping stone for him to become a senator. He thanks God every day, whatever God he worships, he thanks God every day that Frank Lautenberg dropped dead. And the governor at the time appointed him the senator.
In the city of Newark, 3 out of 10 kids graduate high school. What do you think those other 7 kids do? How do you survive in this country right now without a high school degree? The education system's horrible. That's why generation after generation does not get out of the city. We have to provide them with a better option. Donald Trump's actually trying to do that. They're fighting him tooth and nail. Why? It's about the teachers' union.
That's right. But that's systemic, Joe. That's my point, is that when they talk about systemic racism, every city, we just pointed out, has a broken down, corrupt public education system. Every single one. And I don't know every city, but I'll bet my bottom dollar because they're all run by Democrats. And the system keeps that corrupt school system in place. And that's where they ship off all these black kids in the inner city, in Newark and the rest of them that you mentioned, Denver, Phoenix, all of them. That's where they ship them off to. That's not racism. When you don't allow for these, mostly it's young single moms, black, in these cities that want better education for their children.
I.e. charter schools.
If you go to New York City, you know who fought in New York City to try to who was one of the main groups that were behind charter schools and, let's say, competition to be introduced into the system? Single black moms in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, in Queens. They said, I don't want my kid going to that decrepit school. See, the Democrats think that that woman's stupid. That woman's not stupid. She's a mom. She knows what's good for her child. So that, I would say, is systemic racism. Oh, no, you don't have anything to say about that, do you, Democrats? But you'll keep pointing your finger at cops. Let's talk about the cops. Where are all these incidents happening? They're all happening in these same cities. Okay, when you go right down the list, that's where all these problems happen. They're all, look at the Freddie Gray. The Freddie Gray case is a perfect example. They threw race into that whole thing, but at that time, Barack Obama was the president of the United States. Okay, the mayor of Baltimore is black. The police chief black. The city council's black. Most of the cops are black. But Freddie Gray getting killed by the police or while in police custody was systemic racism. What are you talking about? And then when people like us point that out, what they say is, and you know something, you must be racist. That's what they do. That's what they do.
Once again, we're all for improving the situation with regard to the police. I'm all for raising the standards. I'm all for trying my very best to basically bring the conversation to the table, to provide solutions for our African American brothers and sisters in this country. However, I think we have to separate the two conversations. One is political, the other is about the death of George Floyd. Frankly, too many political voices are getting mixed in.
Well, they're forcing that. If you want to have they're always what is always their keywords, Joe? Dialogue. We need dialogue. We need dialogue. It's always about dialogue, right? It's all about conversation. We need to have a conversation. Well, let's talk about real quick. Not to belabor the point about education. Let's talk about just really quick education. Are you going to allow the representatives from the charter schools to be at that table? Are you going to allow the representatives from the Catholic and private schools to be at that table to talk about significant tax breaks for parents that want to get their kids out of the public school and into Catholic school so they don't have to pay through taxes for the public school? They could use that money for their kids to go to Catholic school. Are you going to allow that? No. Of course they're not going to allow that.
You see, why not? Isn't it about the kid? To me, it's about the kid.
I thought so.
I want the very best for all kids.
Do me a favor. Read Anthony's quote.
Oh.
Yeah,
Anthony's
checking in. Aldo's checking in. My baby's checking in. Guys, this is priceless.
Anthony Basil. It's all about accountability for one's own actions. Evidently, these rioters and looters didn't have parents who would crack them over the head with a wooden spoon or whip their asses with a belt.
I did. I got the wooden spoon from my mother, and I got the belt from my father. I want to just read a quote, if that's okay. Okay, because now this brings it back to the culture war. Okay, because again, John Nolte, very, very great writer. Okay, and he hits the nail on the head when it comes to diagnosing these problems. Joe and I talk about this on the show all the time. Okay, and we certainly haven't mentioned God in this discussion, but that's one of the main things that's missing in all this. I just watched a video from Brandon Tatum that went viral, okay? And Brandon Tatum, I believe, is an ex-cop, okay? And he's African American, and that's really what he was saying, is that we've lost God. He fits right in. Well, I'm going to try to get him on the show, okay? But it's the conditions that are set that allow for these things to happen, and most of the time, it's the mentality that people have. So John Nolte writes, quote, and this is priceless, okay? After all, what is Antifa if not the unholy spawn of a Democrat Party and it's nihilistic, this sounds familiar, it sounds like the front line with Joe and Joe, if you ask me. It's nihilistic left-wing religion that preaches you into the spiritual void of loveless sex, massive tuition debt, hating America, despising free enterprise, smoking weed, and the sacrament of killing the unborn. By Democrat design, the marauders in Antifa have no stake in America. Their women's studies degree ensures they have no job, no future, no family, and $150,000 in debt. Hell, why not, Riot? Close quote. Like I said, I think John has been watching the front line with Joe and Joe.
So.
He described these people to a T. At the end of the day, they're godless. That's why they have no boundaries. That's why they don't. Antifa did not care when they looted that store that black woman, my wife commented that she actually co-owned this store. All right, she wasn't a worker there. She was a co-owner of the store. Antifa has no stake in that. You want to know why? Because they're nihilists. They don't care about it. They use words as weapons, but they don't really care about anybody. They certainly don't care about that woman. And John Nolte hit it right on the head. Would you agree?
Oh, without a question. And you know, we've talked about some solutions with regard to maybe ensuring that this doesn't happen again. Again, We want to improve the police department's basically requirements for officers. We talked a little bit about that. We talked about improving the education standards, the background checks. Let's see what the Democratic Party has offered. This is what they've offered. Defund the police. Are you out of your mind?
There's a solution, right?
Defund the police? I'll be honest with you. I'm glad I don't live in that neighborhood.
Eric Garcetti already said he's cutting $150 million
That's Los
from the
Angeles.
LA Police Department.
I will make you a bet. I will make you a bet. Eric Garcetti does not live in that neighborhood.
He lives where, you know where he lives? He lives where Maxine Waters lives. Probably in a $4 million mansion in the suburbs. And Maxine Waters, she represents South Central. And she has for like the last 30 years. She lives in a $4 million house, and I bet you Eric Garcetti is her neighbor.
You see, all you're doing by doing that, Mr. Garcetti, is placating the mob. You're basically offering something up that does not affect you. Once again, I understand that you want the community to basically have a say in what's going on. There's boards that you could create, but the police protect us. If you go into the city of Newark and there's a violent crime and you call the police, they may not even show up. What are you to do?
Right.
What are you to do if you have a family? You have, say, 4 daughters, and you live in an apartment building. You're going to defund the police department?
Well, they want to.
This is your answer to this?
They want to dismantle, but they say, well, they're using 2 words in particular: defund or dismantle. Now, 2 scenarios I heard, both of which are atrocious. Okay. Well, one of which is too ambiguous to even be called atrocious. It was one of these left-wing local politicians, I think on the Minneapolis City Council, that said, we want to replace the police with a new transformative law enforcement model. If that doesn't sound something like right out of Stalin's playbook, having no idea what that means, completely ambiguous, a new transformative law enforcement model. The other one I heard, which this is going to make most of you laugh while you're watching The Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. Please like and share this video when we're done, and like us over on YouTube at The Frontline with Joe and Joe. They want to create a new, I don't know if you could call it a force, but what they basically would be is, instead of cops, social workers. That's it. No, this is not. I'm not joking. I'm not joking.
Someone breaks into your house. Are you going to call a social worker?
Now, we have a wonderful. Me and my wife are in the process, and COVID has set us back a couple months. Most of you know, my wife and I are in the process of fostering children, which we're eventually going to adopt. So one of the social workers, this is a lovely woman. Okay, a really lovely woman. She came, she gave us our final authorization, and we're certified. Now we're just waiting for the kids once COVID is done and everything else. This is a woman, God bless her. She's not a cop. If she shows up, if somebody's trying to break and enter into your house, you're not going to feel safe. I've met a number of social workers in my life. Not one of them is qualified to be a cop. More importantly, God bless them, not one of them is in the type of shape to be a cop. They're not going to break up a fight. They're not going to stop you from breaking into a house. They're not going to stop drug dealers from killing each other. They're not going to stop rapes from occurring. It will be no law enforcement. But remember, we started this conversation by, we're talking about anarchists. What do we want? We want order, ordered liberty. What do they want? They want anarchy.
Order out of chaos.
Right. And
basically, it's getting order, because basically once disorder takes place, you then rely upon the government to come swooping in.
But that will be an imposing order from the federal government if they take charge, not the type of ordered liberty we have now under our Constitution. That's the main difference. You're talking about a left like they had in the Soviet Union or in China right now. We're going to do, not tonight, we're going to do a whole segment on China, which I've been watching a lot of things on China since I've been out of work, okay? China is atrocious. They are worse than the Soviet Union ever was. Ever was, okay? Xi Jinping is not a good guy. He's just as bad as Mao. They're killing tens of millions of people and imprisoning people over there because of religion. There's a lot going on there, okay? But that's what they want. They want authoritarian order. That's what they want to impose on you. They'll have you convinced, by the way, that Donald Trump is the one who wants to do that. That's the opposite of the truth.
Well, it's funny,
and you know that.
You talk about, we talk about the media. Obviously, they haven't been doing justice to a lot of these stories. A lot of the things that we've pointed out have been on Twitter, have been on, Facebook, various different YouTube clips. there was a gentleman, Matthew Iglesias, on Vox, and he basically was tried to compare, talking about China, the rioters to what's going on in Hong Kong.
There is no comparison.
There is no comparison.
That's where these left-wingers, when they talk about fact-checking people, somebody's got to fact-check them. You can't make that comparison.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. Once again, this is not about the president. This is about George Floyd.
Right.
It's not about the president. He was elected by the people. If you do not accept that fact, you do not believe in American democracy.
Right. So, ergo, when we call you un-American, don't start saying, well, who are you to call me? You don't believe in the Constitution. You don't believe in our system of government. You really don't believe in democracy, although they say they do. Let's get to a couple of comments, Joe, if you don't mind.
Go.
All right. Dan's one of our biggest supporters. Thank you, Dan. Dan says they want hedonism and power. They want to re-educate us Christians. Couldn't have said it better myself, Dan. Because when you're talking about the culture war and what the eventual outcome to that war would be, it would be the destruction of Christianity. And what do they impose? Sexual liberation. They promise you freedom. They give you the sex, drugs, and rock and roll and tell you you're free, while in the meantime they turn you into a slave. You are spot on right there, Dan. Gornai. Now, Gornai is an interesting case, okay? Gornai is an African-American.
A veteran.
All right, a veteran, okay? He's in law enforcement now, federal law enforcement now, okay? Gornai voted for Bush. All right, I know this about him. He voted for Bush. He voted for Obama. And he voted for Trump. That tells me he's fair. I'll forgive him for voting for Obama. But that tells me he's fair. Okay? He's not knee-jerk. Gornai said, defunding and dismantling the police is a scary train of thought. We need the police. We need law and order. We also need accountability, as Joe said. Hold these cops to account when things go wrong. And Gornai ended it with God bless the police, which is kind of like the opposite of what we've been hearing lately.
And, you know, and talking about the media, this was another piece of coverage that we saw.
Another gem.
In Columbia, South Carolina, a man was trying to protect his business. He was attacked and beaten senseless by an angry mob because he dared to call the police. And yet Maggie Haberman of the New York Times thinks the big takeaway here is that the man was described as white in a video of the attack by Donald Trump, which he tweeted.
He's getting the crap beat out of him, and I really don't care what color he is, Maggie. A mob is breaking his ass on the street when he's trying to defend his store, and we got to listen to the New York Times. They're so discredited, that newspaper. They used to be a newspaper that conservatives read, you know.
Oh, like, it was a cultured periodical.
Right. They had their token conservative, like William Safire back in the day. They'd post an editorial, maybe written by William F. Buckley once in a while. But at least the New York Times had some semblance of fairness. Ever since Barack Obama's election in 2008, they have gone completely off the deep end. Completely off the deep end. And real quick, Dan said, Augustine, City of God is perfectly written for our times. Absolutely, Dan. And we right now, in America, we're not living in the city of God. We're living in the city of man. That's what John Nolte was pointing out when you talk about all these nihilists. Okay? These self-worshipping nihilists. In other words, that are devoid spiritually. In other words, this is what we're living through. But I want to talk about something with you. I want you to comment on this. Okay? Real quick. We're not big into, I know we've done a lot of reading tonight, but there's been a lot of notes going on. Here's what Nancy Pelosi had to say. That Donald Trump is fanning the flames of hatred. I'm getting tired of this effing media that pay attention to nitwits like her. And Joe, I know we said we were going to call anybody names. I'm tired of her. I wish to God that that gavel in November gets taken out of her hand. Don't care if she represents her district. I don't want that woman to be Speaker of the House. She accused and other people accused Donald Trump of fanning the flames of hatred. That's what they said. Now, I want you to tell me if anything I'm about to say is wrong. See, sometimes you get those memes that go around on Facebook, and some of them are kind of like stupid. Many of them are true. And some of those people do us a favor because they kind of compile lists. Let's go through this one. And by the way, I verified this, so everything I'm about to say is true. Okay? Cory Booker wants to punch the president in the face. True statement?
He said it.
Is that hatred? Is that inciting violence? I think. Joe Biden, of course we know this, not only does he want to do push-ups, more push-ups than you, Joe Biden wants to beat up the president. He said, I'll take him out behind the gym and I'll give him a beating. That's what Joe Biden said about Trump. Maxine Waters, she encouraged people to go into restaurants and other places and harass not just Trump administration officials,
But Republicans.
but Republicans and Trump supporters. And we saw that play out. Ted Cruz got attacked. Who was the Secretary of Education? Huckabee got attacked. That's not violence in it. That's not fanning the flames. Let me ask you, Joe, is that fanning the flames?
Disgraceful.
It's disgraceful. Okay. Snoop Dogg, he's got a video where he shoots Donald Trump. Okay. That's not inside. That's not fanning the flames of violence. Okay. You could go on and on here, but here's one that I want to focus on. Okay, because this one is direct violence. If we all remember, during a baseball game, okay, I'm not going to go through the whole list, right, but there's a lot of examples here, Johnny Depp, Antifa, AOC. Steve Scalise got shot by a Bernie Sanders supporter and nearly died. Now, he was shot by a Bernie Sanders supporter. But you want to know the difference between Donald Trump and Steve Scalise and those on the left? They blame Donald Trump for everything that's wrong with America. They blame Donald Trump for George Floyd. They blame Donald Trump for all this unrest. They blame him for everything, okay? Donald Trump, Steve Scalise, all those people that were shot at on that ball field, and all the Republicans in the House and Senate never once blamed Bernie Sanders. Never once. See, they have class. These other people don't have class. Everything's Trump's fault. This is a guy who almost died, by the way. Steve Scalise almost died. You know what Joy Reid said on CNN when that happened? You want to talk about fanning the flames of hatred? She said, well, you know, he is against choice and he's against marriage equality. She justified him being shot. Now, I want you to... Is anything I said wrong? Who's fanning the flames of violence?
And they get away with it.
Because of the media.
You see, this is what is going on in this country right now. And by the way, none of this has anything to do with George Floyd.
Right.
None of it.
None of it.
There are two discussions that are trying to be blended into one. The discussion that we want to talk about is to bring justice to George Floyd, to ensure that this never happens again, and to have an apolitical discussion.
Right.
That's it. That's all I want.
Right. Find solutions.
Let's find an
apolitical
discussion and have it. Sadly, that's not what we're given.
Nope.
You know, to put a finer point on this conversation, I just want to bring up some facts. You know, the protest lockdowns, basically, have shown that all this COVID-19 stuff is a farce. It's nothing but a farce because they're allowing people to basically riot at will. They're not doing anything, and nor are they saying anything.
Right.
You know, let me just remind you of some statistics right now. More than 40 million Americans have now filed for unemployment. An estimated 100,000 small businesses have already permanently shut down. About 1 in 3 Americans are experiencing signs of clinical anxiety and depression. Thousands of others have been put out of critical health procedures so hospitals could build adequate capacities for an overwhelming surge in cases that never came in most parts of the country. The media simply doesn't care.
No.
The media simply does not care. They're downplaying the violence from days of lawless anarchy, terrorizing our nation, because the message fits into their own progressive agenda. Legacy media painted the anti-lockdown protesters as heartless grandma-killing rubes.
Mm-hmm.
These Americans, the media said, were reckless, they were selfish, they were dangerous and suicidal. One would be hard-pressed to find that kind of reporting or even large protests today because it does not exist. You see, this whole thing is just in a litany of things that have gone on for the past 4 years.
That's right.
We had the Russian hoax. We had, basically, they tried to take the president out of his seat.
It was a coup.
Now, you have the COVID-19 situation,
well, don't forget Ukraine,
which was valid, but at the same time, don't think for a minute there isn't political implications to that mess. And now, they're trying to use the crisis of a man who was murdered unjustly by a police officer, and they're basically saying that it's the president's fault.
Right. And the good thing is, Joe, they're losing every time. They've lost every time. They're losing the COVID argument, okay? We're seeing it now. Why is there no social distancing? Now, even with the peaceful protesters, there's no social distancing being imposed on them, okay? There's no mask. Most of the people are not wearing masks. Forget about the rioters. I'm talking about even the protesters. It shows you that they don't care. You know why they don't care? Because they know that COVID's bullshit. Or at least their reaction to it has been bullshit. They know that, okay? So write one thing after another. I called Joe Friday, and for all you good people out there, okay, don't know if you caught the news. You mind if I recap the news on Friday? Friday was a very bad day for Democrats, and I'm going to give you 2 reasons why, okay? Number one, the jobs report came out, okay? Because some states turned around to their and they started opening up, okay? So Wall Street was expecting a loss of jobs. The economy created 2.5 million jobs, okay? They expected a spike in the unemployment rate to close to 20%. It went down to, I think, 12 and change or 13%. The market was up 900 points. And it shows you, because markets are forward-looking indicators, okay, because that's what the market is, all right? And they're, in their mind, again, follow the money. They put their bet on Wall Street and on stocks and on the economy, because what they're saying is what I just said. COVID is over. It's done. Okay? And you have states opening up, so you had economic news that the Democrats are not welcoming. Remember,
why shouldn't they welcome it if you're American?
If you're American, they will not. The other thing is this. About a month and a half ago, Donald Trump got up there at the podium, all right? And he said AstraZeneca might have a vaccine by September. He was, of course, laughed at by CNN and MSNBC. How dare you say something like that? AstraZeneca came out on Friday. They said they're on the fast track for FDA approval for a vaccine for COVID, okay? Now, here's the thing that's the most important thing. They're not waiting till September to produce the product. They're producing it now, and they have not even gotten FDA approval. What does that tell all you good people listening to the front line with Joe and Joe? No no pharmaceutical company is going to start manufacturing a product that's not gotten FDA approval. Not one. They wouldn't do it because they're not going to risk. They're not going to risk that money. They're producing it because they know it works. Number one. And number two, they're going to get FDA approval. And I said this to all you good people that are listening to us at the front line with Joe and Joe. I said it a while ago. If there's a vaccine for COVID before the election, New Jersey might go for Donald Trump. I wouldn't want to be Joe Biden if they were.
I don't want to be Joe Biden.
Well, I don't want to be Joe Biden anyway. I'm sorry to get long-winded.
No.
But it was a very, very bad day for Democrats. Very bad day. So what do they have to hang their hat on now? The riots. That's why we're talking about the riots tonight, because there might be more before the election. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We didn't know COVID was going to happen. We didn't know George Floyd was going to get killed. We didn't see Antifa come out of the woodwork for a while. Now they're out there marching in the street. Okay? So we don't know what the shoe's going to drop. But COVID is done. And Trump led us through it. And AstraZeneca is going to get us a vaccine, so screw Bill Gates and Dr. Fauci. And again, I wouldn't want to be Joe Biden anyway. But I really wouldn't want to be Joe Biden running against Donald Trump if that's the case.
And to put a finer point on our discussion, we are absolutely for justice for George Floyd. We are absolutely in favor of improving basically our police requirements, having that discussion. We are absolutely open to a discussion with our African American brothers and sisters to give them more comfort when dealing with the police. We are absolutely against any violence whatsoever with regard to protests. And we are absolutely against mixing politics with this crisis. And that is what the media, the oligarchs, and the politicos are doing. That's what we try to expose through this dialogue.
Dialogue. It's all about dialogue. It's dialogue. Let's have a conversation.
I hope we were successful.
I hope we have a conversation.
And thank you very much for joining us. Please catch us on the Crusade channel. We're there every Monday. It's a great channel.
Just sign up for a 30-day free trial.
Absolutely a great station. It's a service that my church provides. And I truly believe it's an American service.
Yeah, no, my church is awesome. All right. Want to give a quick shout out. Gretel's joining us. I think Gretel's new to the show. Hi, Gretel. How are you? She said Obama cannot take credit for the resurgence of jobs and the stock market rise now, but he's trying, Gretel. He's out there trying to take credit. Well, all this started under Obama. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Joe works at a bank and I used to work on Wall Street. Absolutely not. You told us all it was the new normal, Barack Obama. That's what you said. You said get used to 1.5% growth. Those manufacturing jobs are not coming back. What magic wand are you going to wave to bring the jobs back? Well, Trump waved some magic wand. Okay? So the bottom line is we need to remember that what's going on right now speaks to what we do here at the front line with Joe and Joe and your conversations around your kitchen table. We are in a culture war. That's what these current rioters are that's what they're the result of right now. They're the violent wing of the culture war. Culture war usually takes place in the press, in academia, and Hollywood. Well, now they've brought it to the street. Okay? So we have to keep pointing them out. We need to keep exposing them. Antifa is not to be listened to. They're an ultra-Marxist left-wing organization. We hope Donald Trump and Bill Barr will go after them. Okay? But in the meantime, I think it's important to say, you just mentioned about violence. Our counter-revolutionary action right now, the best counter-revolutionary reaction you could have right now is to speak up. Speak the truth. Okay, there's a lot of people out there that are losing their jobs, unfortunately, for speaking the truth. Okay, if we let them intimidate us, okay, we are going to lose. We're going to go down in flames. We don't have to punch them in the face. We don't have to meet them in the street. We have to do what we're doing now. We have to support many others that are doing the same thing. Form a real fellowship around fighting this culture war, and we'll win. We'll win. That's what we need to keep doing. Am I right?
Absolutely.
No violence. We're Christian men. No, not needed.
We do not support violence of any kind.
Right.
None.
And that's what we need to. That's what we need to remember. And we need to pray. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
We all need to pray to Almighty God, because ultimately, remember, He's in control, which always gives us hope. Okay. And we will beat them. But like I said, the counter-revolutionary act right now is to speak up and speak against these injustices that the left is trying to impose on us.
And remember, our conversation is your conversation, and it's going on everywhere. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next Sunday night.
See you next Sunday, 8 o'clock.